however, no people who profit from making voting systems or have their own companies that develop voting systems, but these were researchers who have proposals, many of which have been tested, pilot tested for use in sort of public elections. There were also people who analyze voting systems to find flaws, so not constructive but analytical work. There were some voting activists, legal, I'm not sure about the legal scholars, there were usability, accessibility scholars who actually are interested in the use of internet voting to enable differently abled people. And there were also election officials. So this was 30 people, and as I said yesterday, the report said that no existing commercial internet voting system is secure, no existing commercial internet voting system is auditable. As such, internet voting today is not secure. It additionally said that all internet voting systems should be end-to-end verifiable, but end-to-end verifiability is not enough. It listed about at least 5 qualities that end-to-end verifiable systems don't address, and therefore said that end-to-end verifiable systems must be used in supervised settings. And so supervised settings doesn't mean that a camera is watching you. A supervised setting means that there are trained polling officials who are trained for authentication purposes and who are trained to help out if the voter feels that her vote is not recorded correctly. So this is what is meant by the report about a supervised voting setting, that end-to-end verifiable systems should be used in supervised settings before they are attempted to be used in internet voting. It also said that there are a number of problems with internet voting and that we do not know if these are even solvable, and that internet voting should not be used till these are solved. Now I should emphasize that here we are not talking about the perfect. So we are not talking about a perfect internet voting system. We're talking about something that's good enough, which is why we say today, and this is our responsibility to say, additionally, because I work in constructive work, that all of my work has been in constructing systems. I have tried them in real municipal elections. I have an interest in terms of what my name will be and what my fame will be if my voting systems are actually used in real elections. But I'm saying that today you cannot use them because it's just not secure enough. And so what I worry, I will tell you honestly, what I worry is that if we do systems, so if we have these 10 million voters voting on the internet, casting their votes on the internet, then I think that there will be a number of neighbors and enemies and allies who will compete to see how many can replace those votes. This is the kind of scenario that can happen. Now, like I said, I'm not a scaremonger. Normally, in conferences, I talk about systems and their properties, and this is how we can do this. I don't talk about attacks. That's not my speciality. But I'm still saying this to you. So and there are other ways of doing it. There is the e-postal ballot. You can do that. Use that. Think about, if you're thinking about older voters, think about their real needs. If you're thinking about rural older voters, think about their needs. So don't start off by saying it has to be internet and we have to use it. Maybe it's coming down the line. Okay, but 10 years down the line, at that time evaluate it. Why do you want to go in? I think it's like, it has to be internet. That's what we are starting with. And then we have to fit our problems to the internet. Now that's what teenagers do. For them, everything is the internet, everything is their smartphone. But that doesn't mean that, and especially if it's the election commission that's driving the car. There are people egging them on. There are people putting fuel in the car. But they're the only ones with the brakes. They are the ones with access to the technical expertise with the brakes. And that's what has given them respect today. And if we say that EVMs are great, and I agree, but remember, it's the VVPAT along with the EVM that is great. The EVM by itself was in court cases all the way, and our courts, which we respect, which are as respected as the ECI here and outside, our courts said that you need the paper trail. And that is what a free and fair election is. And the courts are looking out for those people whose rights could be damaged by this. Now, I'm going to ask you this question. I've not said it so far, but I'm going to say, so you don't have a paper trail for these 10 million voters who are voting abroad. It affects the rights of those who vote here. So what are the courts going to say to that?
Good point. I think just to comment on what Shivaraman said, as a member of technical committee, we actually supervised and looked at the VVPAT, introduction of VVPAT. And believe me, our concern here, even though you have actually talked about it, our concern was not to actually see whether it is a pre-printed specialized ink and on which when you print it, the actual print diminishes after 3 days or 5 days of storage and the pre-printed specialized ink thing actually comes alive. Of course, there is a possibility of such kind of a threat. The point that we are trying to say is that there is no such thing known as absolute security. Right? Why it doesn't exist? Because the scenario that you talked about, VVPAT is by definition voter verifiable paper audit trail. Right? Now, the reason for that is that it is verifiable, but right now, just you saying something which might be a very far-fetched thing today, but there is a possibility. I don't know whether such ink exists or not. Okay, I don't know whether these inks can be actually used there or not. But let's look at what as a process Election Commission has done. Election Commission has identified that the paper will be sourced from a known party, right? It will be an authentic paper. It will be pre-printed with the Election Commission's logo on one side. It will be, and our concern was not really the VVPAT printing as such. Our concern really was that will we have a discrepancy in the control unit of the DRE and the printed slips, and therefore we went and made huge amount of things, huge amount of design decisions there to say whether the printing is correct or not, whether the printing happened correctly or not, whether the paper has actually fallen there or not, right? And made sure that everything that actually has been printed is recorded and everything that has been recorded is actually printed, right? And that is, I think, what is more important. Maybe tomorrow, when somebody actually comes up with this invisible ink kind of a solution, maybe we will have to look at, answer to that also. But you just strengthened my point that there is no such thing known as absolute security. And I think it is important to understand that. Any other question?
Just one point in the same connection. We cannot forget that it is elector voter as one of the entity coming in election process besides election management bodies. But there is another community which is a political parties and candidates, those who are contesting election. When we say that it has to be free, fair and transparent election, then we need to take care of these aspects as well. So verifiability is but a question and it has to be there, it should be there. We are trying to bring up, of course, sometimes it so happens, as he suggested, that the conduct process becomes complex, which should be simpler. He is right when he says so. But what simple is simple and what complex is complex, it depends upon the scenario. Don't ask me. Ask me those people, those who are sitting here from State Election Commission conducting local bodies elections. Local bodies elections are more intense than any election that we are managing. So what they face, and I can understand when gentleman commented that RO should be involved. He is worried and he is right when he says so, because he has seen that particular point. Our DIO from Goa, he is also right when he says that it should be a simple process. But there is nothing like absolute simple and there is nothing like absolute complex. It all depends upon the environment, scenario and requirement. Last point, Election Commission has not identified anybody whose services are to be taken for conduct of internet voting as of now. We are not going for internet voting as a short-term goal, as I already described. We are going for e-postal ballot. That is what we judged as a requirement, and that requirement we are trying to fulfill. And yes, of course, as a dream. Sometimes it so happens that there is a reality. On top of it, there is another layer of what is called as dream. And then there is one more layer on top of it, that what is called as a fantasy. We are not in fantasy, we are in dream only, but definitely we are allowed to have some fantasy also. So let us think about if any solution in future what we can bring in, and that's what is we are saying. Thank you.
I just want to make two comments on top of the good comments that have been made so far. One of them is what the meaning of supervision is, and another comment is about perfect security. Professor Vora said that the polling place must be supervised so that there's a staff member there who can help out and authenticate the voter. In fact, their role is, of course, more important than that. They have a job to be vigilant, and they're trained to be looking out for certain things. And whatever voting system we dream up tomorrow, if it's a supervised system, the people they're supervising it have to have a meaningful role. They have to be able to see trouble and see what it is and stop it or report it. For example, if they're in a polling station and there's a screen, and every now and then a green tick appears on the screen, that's not very convincing. Okay, it's just a green tick. So the reason that end-to-end verifiable voting uses receipts and paper is that paper is low tech, and the type of checks you do on paper aren't hard, and they're meaningful. So the role of supervision is this meaningful vigilance that takes place in the polling station. The second thing I wanted to say was about perfect security. I agree that the political parties will be hard to convince about big changes to the electoral process. They will be very hard to convince. But the issue is that when one of these parties loses, they're going to come to us and say, prove it. And the kind of proof that we can offer them will never be perfect proof. We can never just point to one thing and say, look, there you go, 100% convincing, 100% security. It'll never exist. But what we do try to do is give them enough confidence so that it just seems terribly unlikely that anything bad happened. And that's the goal of verifiable voting.
As we were discussing, I think this is a very first step we are taking, and I think Professor Vora has brought up many points which are to be very carefully taken into account. But I think this first step we will definitely have to take some time, and that's what exactly we are sitting here right now. Three things will again happen. That a small beginning from the ballot posting, that's what exactly we are discussing now, that at least internet will be used to deliver the initial part, and then the postal thing will come up. I think for that, if the internet is used, I think there's no threat there. So if that is acceptable, that's what exactly is the first thing which we are talking of right now. The second level, for the visually impaired or disabled people, as the case study was presented yesterday from the Craig, that again, if we can modify it and make it happen, that will again one step further. I think step by step, if we move, I think we will land up with the verifiability portion and try to see how those things can be incorporated from the internet. Let's not be very much dependent on internet, but internet as a communication media, if we can use, that should be definitely a welcome thing to happen. I think these 2-3 things are coming to my mind. I think there's no dispute on these points, so we can take these things forward. I think that's what exactly we are trying to do now, and try to take it to the next level as we move on. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Otherwise, I think we will actually say that the session is now closed. I'll just summarize what our panelists and what our conference over 2 days has actually delivered. I think we started with technologies. We started looking at like for example, is internet voting a right thing? And I think we have actually looked at varied spectra. For example, supervised internet voting or supervised voting in general is a must. End-to-end verifiability is absolutely desirable, especially in terms of transparency. And I want to actually say that in the beginning, when we actually know what are the possible threats, knowing them upfront is a lot better than you providing a solution and not knowing what the vulnerabilities were and later start correcting those solutions because those vulnerabilities exist. I think knowing vulnerabilities and whether they are real or not real, whether they are possible or not possible, and then moving forward is much better solution than not knowing those vulnerabilities. And I think this conference has actually brought out many of those vulnerabilities right up front. We actually, have several, presenters here, including Professor Purvi Vora and Craig Burton, who actually have said this end-to-end verifiable system is important. Authentication is important. Authentication of the voter is important, and all these things are important. For example, there are things like, are you putting the right code into the system? Are you doing the right hardware? I mean, is this hardware free of malicious software? I mean, there are all these important issues, and one has to look at answers to all of them before we actually move ahead. Okay, at least we must have an answer. But I think there are other spectra of people who have actually very high confidence in the technology and looking at saying, we have actually made great strides in the technology using internet as a communication media, whether it is in banking, whether it is in passing passwords, keeping this solutions, all that kind of logging, seeing emails on the internet, keeping your files in the cloud and all that. I think cloud technology in general, I think there have been a lot of trust and faith I think people actually put in. The bottom line is, and as has been pointed out by several people, it is the faith of people which defines the technology. Okay, and that is actually a very, very important thing. It is the confidence of people in the technology, is the confidence of people and confidence of all stakeholders, which is what is very, very important. I mean, it's not that legal framework is not important, but legal framework effectively goes with the flow of people's voice. So in some sense, it's just maybe a delay, but legal framework is important, but ultimately at the end of the thing, it is the confidence of people and the trust of people which is important. We have had people from various election commissions, state election commissions, ROs, and various district people who have actually implemented, elections. We have had people from election commission itself, and I think there is one very important thing that actually has come about here is that it should be simple for people to use, it should be easy for people to use, because they are the people at the ground level which actually provide the trust to the people, which actually tell people that this is the right thing, which actually look at the concerns of people and bring it up front. So these are actually important things because they are the people who are actually looking at day-to-day conduct of election, day-to-day problems which actually come upon. And as somebody was saying yesterday, EVMs actually have not come with the solution. It has actually come with the problems for all such people. Why? Because earlier when there were paper ballots, there were very little problem. All they needed to do is just look at, is the ballot box empty or not? Does it have, is it rusted, not rusted? Put a scale with the ballot paper and a seal, and that's it. Okay? But now, from a conduct of election viewpoint, there are too many things that they need to do. Okay? Preparing the EVMs, preparing the ballot paper, preparing the FLC, first level checks, and these kind of things. And there's just too many rules, mock poll and all that kind of things. And then after that, conducting a counting. I mean, all of these things have actually, any time a technology comes, it also comes with an additional layer of providing a trustworthy solution. And that trustworthy solution actually comes from the people on the field. So that's an important thing I think we should not miss out. We have actually looked at, for example, internet-based solution have been in use at various places. And I'm not saying internet-based solution is an unsupervised solution, because largely the solution today has been in public elections, supervised solution. But then if you look at various other things like stakeholders, company shareholders meetings and these kind of things, which actually large number of these things are actually now happening over internet. Elections of societies, large number of them are actually happening over internet. So are we saying that the things are wrong there? The answer is no. But then the question is, what stakes are there? What if something goes wrong? Okay, do we have an alternate plan to actually take care of something has gone wrong? In fact, in EVM, it is not that EVM provides the solution to every problem. What EVM actually, in fact, let me also explain you this. The VVPAT is only a new thing that has come up. It is in less than 1% of the polling booths that VVPAT has actually been used till today. The problem is not about the trustworthiness of the VVPAT or not. The problem is, if I have a question, do you have an answer to that? Okay? And if we have an answer, then suddenly the trust goes high. Okay? And that is the solution that VVPAT is providing. Of course, VVPAT in due course of time will probably come in large number of parliamentary constituencies and assembly constituencies and polling booths and all that. It will happen. But does this exist today? We have been putting a lot of faith on saying VVPAT is a verifiability issue, solving verifiability problem. But we have to look at the ground reality, okay, and see, is it really solving that problem, or is some voter going to come up and say what, for example, our friend Shivraman actually talked about, that there is a invisible ink which is actually playing havoc there, right? And that is an important thing we have to look at again. So there is always a trust that one has to build in the system. I think with this, I actually thank everybody. It has been a very, very fruitful conference, at least to me. It has been an eye-opener in terms of awareness that people have from all aspects. And in fact, the fourth thing that people actually talked about is in terms of infrastructure, technical infrastructure and solutions to that. I think there is a huge plethora of things that we talked about over these 2 days of the conference. Looking forward to next conference where we will actually have people from the ground level operations coming up and saying that they have trust in this, and that is going to be our real, icing on the cake, and that is what we look forward to. Thank you very much. You want to say?
Yeah, just only one statement while formal thanks will be there. I would like to definitely appreciate and put on record my thanks to Mr. Mahesh Kulkarni and his team, who has taken all trouble. Clap for him